Hello. I am coming in with a video. It might go a little while, but about a year ago, less than a year ago, more than half a year ago, I'd say, I made the video explaining my experience of injuries and psychosis, and I left off a little bit after getting into the hospital. And the whole ordeal went far beyond just the hospital and mental care and recovery at home. But I think I'm going to make this at least a 3-part series where I'm going to go into more detail, not complete disclosure of like what was going on in my mind so much, and but just get into what is on the record, what was seen by professionals, mental health professionals and medical professionals and law enforcement. But I do want to share some more of my experience, and I was going to make like a makeup video tonight. As you can see, I have no eyebrows and my dark circles and all that, but as I thought about it, I just kind of like dreaded getting into it all. And typically when I do makeup videos, I want them to be for fun. And usually when I do start them, it's a little work to get it going and work to actually apply it, but I do end up enjoying it. So I probably would have if I did it this way, but to keep in line with the part 1 of this series, I was sitting in my garage, no makeup, and just kept it real, no notes, just going off memory. And because it has been so long since I actually, this happened in 2021, we're now in 2024, I don't think I'll forget details, but I mean, things are getting a little, time does kind of diminish the edge, I guess. I don't know how to explain it, but I just want to video document these things, if not for myself, but also to share with somebody else, anybody else, to just explain my experience, because it was practically unique. This is the only word that comes to mind, but it was kind of not over the top. I'm struggling to find the word, but it was it was quite the experience. So I'm just gonna hold my camera, and I don't know how long it's gonna go, and I don't really care, but I'm just gonna go through some of the stories, I guess. I don't know what else to call it, but yeah, I probably will overlap a little bit, and I'm taking forever to get to the meat of the experience. But yeah, just going into it, I just wanted to explain what is on my mind and why I'm doing this. So it is a Friday afternoon. I had the day off today. I took it off for Mental Health Day, and this is what I want to do instead of putting makeup on my face. So I might keep rubbing my eyes. I just had to clean off my contacts. I am dusty or something. So okay, the hard part is always to think of where to begin. So I'm going to go a little bit before where I left off. So I'm thinking that I already explained, I had experienced psychosis after fasting for an extended period of time, and my potassium plummeted. And I think someday I might even go into the story of what I was feeling. That might be another makeup video where I was just like, what I was actually feeling when I was driving and in the woods. So I was kind of on the run, and I crashed my car into a creek, and I was separated from my cat, and I went into the woods, and I hid from law enforcement, and spent the night in the woods, and shot myself in the head with a handgun before the daylight came. I survived. I came out of the woods before the search, before they entered the woods to try to search for me, and I found a place to wait until sheriff deputies came for me. So they came, and I handed over my belongings to them, and I let them know that I shot myself, and they called for an ambulance. And there was one that initially assisted me, and then while I was talking with him, another one came, another officer, and he was very nice to me, and I was experiencing psychosis, so I made it clear to them that I didn't trust them, and I said some other things that, that there was a bounty for me, basically, and they, they didn't blow it off, but they, as we waited for the ambulance, the second officer to arrive, he brought me a water and a Gatorade, and I let him know that I was not going to drink it because I didn't trust him, and but he still brought him with us, and he rode with me in the ambulance. So they had me on the stretcher in the ambulance. They were, I can't really remember exactly. I think they checked like my blood pressure and things like that, but they really didn't do much like triage or anything. They which I really was, I mean, just by looking at me, you wouldn't have known I was injured on my head. And I remember it was a really bumpy ride. I felt like I was gonna fall off the gurney every time, like I hit a bump, and I was talking the whole time, and I probably was saying some goofy things, and but they were very nice to me, so they brought me in, and I was out in the country, and they had to bring me to a hospital outside of the it wasn't the it was the same county, but it wasn't the same town that I had injured myself in. So they brought me to the hospital. It was a small hospital, and brought me into the ER on the gurney, and immediately took me to get an MRI. From the MRI, they determined that there was no fracture of my skull, and from there they took me on the gurney to the emergency department, a room, and transferred me into the bed. And the whole time the officer was there with me, and he told me he was going to stay with me, and the water and Gatorade, he brought the water and Gatorade and gave it to me again, and the nurse actually took it away from me, which I didn't drink it anyways, but the nurse took it away from me, and she said it over. Looking back at it, they probably, the hospital didn't probably want me to consume anything until they ran their tests. So that wasn't even an option. So, and I wasn't, at that point, I wasn't thirsty or hungry or anything. I was just fairly numb. I mean, I felt pain from my gunshot and pain all over my body. My body was covered in scratches and rashes and thorns, and the whole day I was in the woods. I was in a fairly muddy area, so it took quite a bit of muscle to maneuver around it. And I did do a lot of like scooting and crouching and sliding around while I was in the woods, because I was trying to stay low. I was in a trench because I did not want to be detected. So I did early on, before it even got dark, I was wearing leggings. They were new pair of leggings. It was like my second time ever wearing them. And I don't know if this is TMI, but I wasn't wearing underwear. But my leggings were torn from the whole, from the front to the back, and the whole, they were torn completely. Like, so I still had my clothes on at that point, and I was covered in mud and just leaves and just wood stuff, twigs and blood, and just I was a mess. So they did wheel me in, and they did get me into a room fairly soon, and they did get me into a hospital gown. And the whole time, the officer, he was sitting outside in my room. My bed was my feet were facing where he was sitting, and I even told him, I think, before, when we were he knew my whole junk was ripped out of my pants on the way there. But I remember thinking, I was so nervous. Not even nervous, because I mean, honestly, it was like I still was just like in a mindset of like, this is what we're doing. So I think he might have seen my stuff though. And then when I changed into the gown, they had blankets on me, and he was still down there, and I probably, like, I felt like I might have lifted my blanket too much, because my whole body hurt, and everything moving, like any movement was like labored, and I had to really like put effort into, like, just like, I remember just moving my legs, and like the whole blanket kind of came up. So I mean, honestly, even if he did see something, it's not a big deal. But so I was just feeling very vulnerable and exposed at that moment. And this is just immediately when I got in there, and he told me he knew my dad was on the way, because my dad was not going to be allowed to be involved in the search for me, but they weren't going to stop my dad from coming to town anyways. And he knew that they were going to do the search around the time where I actually came out of the woods. So he was already on his way, and he was probably about an hour away from, he lives an hour away from where I was at in the hospital. So apparently they called him immediately and told him that I was in the hospital. So the officer told me he will wait there with me until my dad got there, which I really appreciated, because and I didn't even trust the officer. He was all tatted up and stuff. And I remember saying something to him when he first started to help me, because I was like trying to see what his tattoos meant and stuff. And I just didn't trust him. But honestly, at that point, I don't think I'm gonna cry much in this video, but there were moments of just like where I had to rely on others. And even though I was like sketchy about him, I was very grateful that he was there on guard. So he stayed there, and time is so weird in this. Obviously, remembering it too, but even like when it was still fresh, time was. I couldn't even tell you how long it was, but I know it wasn't long that my dad showed up. I would guess 20 minutes maybe that I was in there before my dad came in. So obviously, immediately from when they got me in my gown and stuff, they started blood work and things. And some of these details are also hazy for me because I don't really remember in particular like what they were checking and what they were doing. And so they it's gonna be a long video probably. I was in the hospital ER for a total of 3 days. So, but the most of it was in the initial and being admitted or brought in. My dad shows up, and I'm still, my mind's still in a haze, and I was immediately just rambling off things to him. And my dad being my dad, he kind of was light of it, and I told him some of the outrageous things that I thought were gonna happen to me, and I'm thinking, like, I don't think I want to say what I was thinking on this video, but I almost want to because it was so crazy. But I mean, it does happen, and that's what makes it so scary, is that, I mean, I'm not scared of it anymore. I feel safe, and I feel like God is taking great care of me. So, but there's still this trauma, I think, involved, because it was very real to me, even if it was because of the psychosis. So I'm telling my dad that you were trying to do this to me, and my dad was like, well, what, of course, why wouldn't they want to do that to you? Just trying to keep me calm. And my dad's way of always trying to keep me calm is by jokes and being lighthearted. And he stayed by my side, and the officer hung out for a little bit longer. There was an overlap where him and my dad were both there, and my dad checked in with him. Well, he checked in with my dad, and let my dad know he was looking out for me. My dad, I saw just a little interaction between the two of them, and before the officer left, I think my dad was dealing with the nurse's station, and the officer told me, I'm gonna leave you, and he's like wishing me well, and he made sure to mention he told me, your dad loves you very much. And I don't know what made him say that. I imagine because they were interacting with my dad from before they even found me, before I came out. The thing that is touching me at this moment is just recently I remembered a childhood event and this has nothing to do with this story, but when I was injured, and my first ambulance ride. I've only had 2 ambulance rides. That was the second. My first one was I'm gonna go into this quick story because there's some relevance, but it's with my dad. When I was about about 5, I had jumped down a flight of stairs and I fractured my skull, and I had knocked myself out. And my dad was a rookie at the fire department, and at that time they had them working the paramedics. And my dad was at work when that happened, and he got the call, so he knew he was coming to his house. They got the age wrong, and I think they might have said a boy, but he thought he was coming to attend to my brother. So, but it was me. And I don't remember much of it because I was in and out of consciousness, but what I do remember is my dad in the drive. So it turns out they were going to try to they were going to airlift me to the children's hospital that was about an hour away. But it was going to take so long to get the helicopter in place that they decided, and I don't know if it's the only time, but it was the first time where they drove the ambulance not only to another state, but so far away. And because it would have been faster just to get me there in the ambulance than to wait for the helicopter to prepare and all that. So I don't know if that had anything to do with my dad being one of the paramedics, but I do remember on that ride my dad standing over me right over the top of my head. So I would look up and I would see my dad, and he was slapping my face. I remember he kept telling me, "Jenna, wake up." And I've always remembered that, and I've always called my dad my hero because of that, and many other times where he's aided my injuries, my many injuries. But what reminded me of that story was, I might cry. Recently was, I was thinking, I put myself in my dad's shoes in that moment, and how scary it must have been, because I've seen family, siblings, injured, and how much it scared me as their sibling. So I couldn't imagine as a parent, your kid passing out in front of you, and you're struggling to keep them awake on the way to the emergency department. And but there was also a little bit of a blessing in that he could be with me, that he was my parent, and he was, obviously once they got me there, he had to, step back, but I had my dad with me, My parents didn't have to meet them at the hospital. My dad was with me the whole time. So, putting myself in his position, it broke my heart to think of not the stress, but the nervousness I've put my dad through. So I can imagine him knowing I had a gunshot wound and spent the night in the woods in a car accident, and I don't know what he pictured he was gonna walk into, but I doubt he imagined me. He's there with crazy hair and half naked and talking about they were gonna do this to me. But he knows me, though. He knows. So I definitely know how much my dad loves me. But for that officer to that I didn't know, to tell me that, I knew I was safe. And I am sorry for all the worry I put my dad through, because before they found me, I just know he was in contact with the the officers in charge and stuff, and he knew I was armed, and he told me how he begged for the officers to know that I'm not dangerous and to not shoot me. He begged for them not to shoot his daughter because he didn't know how that was going to go if they did come across me. And he knows me enough to know that I wouldn't have done like a shootout or anything. I wouldn't have. Anyways, so that was so much stress on him. So I'm sure it was quite the relief to him to not only know that I was found, but I was not far from him and that he could get to me soon and he could be with me. So I'm in the hospital. My dad's there. The officer steps out. He stayed there a little while after my dad got there even. I mean, I'm probably going to get the timeline of stuff out of order, but after my dad was there, they were still examining me and running tests. And the results came back that my potassium was low and that they needed to bring it back up through IV. And so much to the story. I'm almost thinking maybe I shouldn't do it all tonight. I don't know. That they we're gonna bring it back up slowly through IV and put me on a heart monitor while they did that. So they did that, got that going, and she told me it was gonna be uncomfortable, and it was torturous. The IV, it felt like acid burning, grinding. It felt horrible. And I asked her, how long is this going to be? And she was very hesitant to tell me that, she said, it'll be a while. And I was like, how long is it going to be? What's a while? What are we talking? She said, about an hour. I remember my dad was holding my hand, and it was horrible. And he, in his jokingly self, I was like crying to him, not crying, but moaning, bitching and moaning. And he was like, I bet you'll take better care of yourself now. I was like, yeah. So luckily about halfway through, I don't know if I got used to the pain or if it got less or what, but it wasn't as horrible as like the first half of it. It still wasn't comfortable. I was ready to get it off, but so we got through that, and then they did have to give me some additional supplements of potassium, like pills. They're big pills. And then they so at some point, I think it was before my dad, I think it was sometime around this time, but I did speak with the officer on the phone. I didn't have my phone with me because I left my phone at home. I didn't want to be tracked or anything, so they had a cell phone that I was using through the hospital, and I did talk to the sheriff deputy that was ahead of my case on that, and he had a few questions to ask me about my gun license and things like that. And he informed me that there weren't going to be any charges pressed against me because I had quite a bit going on. And he's like, you had enough going on. And he knew that I was going to voluntarily get mental health treatment. So, but he got his information from me. I guess he did stay in contact with my dad, though, but he didn't bother me anymore after that. Sorry, I'm going through memories, and like there's so much that was involved in every interaction, and I'm leaving a lot of it out because a lot of it was like super, the signs and just the things that I was thinking. It's a lot. And and at some point, so then finally, I don't know, this was like in the evening by then, but so I think my dad had been, I can't remember if he had already been, it was pretty early on that my dad he left the hospital and then came back, and he did go get me one change of clothes, and he asked me what I needed before he went, and I just told him something because we knew I was going to go to the hospital, and I so wish I remembered to tell him I needed underwear, but I didn't. Anyways, so he left a couple times, and one of the times he came back, I guess he met with the officers because he brought me my little Bible, my little pocket Bible, New Testament, that I kept in my glove box. So he got that for me and gave it to me while I was in the hospital, and I forgot I even had it. So it was like nice to have that. And he had talked, he had written out everybody's phone numbers that I would need, like my mom, my dad. And my mom was sick and she was dying with cancer, and I did not call her, and I don't know why, but I also didn't want to disturb her. I just, yeah. So he wrote all the numbers. And my mom, actually, she was so sick, she wasn't answering her phone at that time anyways. And I remember talking to a couple of my siblings while my dad was there on his phone. And it was crazy. And I kind of forgot about it, but a while later, my brother even was like, yeah, you sounded very different. And he remembered our conversation, and I was like, oh, I forgot I even talked to you. So there was a lot that like was in the haze. So after they so the doctor, after they saw that there was no fracture or anything, the doctor checked on me like one time and like was like, well, you know, like there's nothing really he could do. Like they do not remove bullet fragments unless they're like a threat where they're at. And so, you know, it was basically me dealing with the nurses. After my potassium was up where it needed to be, she was like, well, you can eat now. And it was so funny because it had been weeks since I've ate, a couple weeks, and that's why I was there, was because I wasn't eating. And I wasn't hungry, but I remember thinking, okay, that sounds good. Like the idea of food was, I was not bothered by eating. Like they didn't have to push me to eat. So I was like, okay. And she was like, you could order anything. So I got, for my first meal, I got a cheeseburger and fries, and I think some fruit. And so it came, and it looked good, and I was like, I was ready to get down on it. And I went to take a bite of the burger, and I didn't realize it, but the gunshot wound had caused, so I did realize when I shot myself, immediately there was intense dizziness, ringing, numbness, and I still to this day have it on my left side of my mouth area and my left hand. That I was aware of. And then of course the which wasn't immense pain, but you know, the discomfort from actually having, you know, a hole in your head. So, and the weird thing is like there's a lot more, and maybe it's because I'm fat, but there's a lot more depth in there than you would think. Like it wasn't just, you know, like a thin layer of flesh and then bone. Like I wasn't even aware, I don't know how deep it was, but so but when I opened my mouth to take a bite of the burger, I realized I could barely open my mouth. And I freaked out a little bit. I was like asking the nurse, like, is that normal? Is that going to go away? What's going on? And, you know, they don't have too many people who survive a gunshot to the head. So she was like, I don't know. She was like, it's not a surprise, but she couldn't tell me what was going to happen with it or not. So it was the first time I've ever had like lockjaw. So it was very different for me. And so, but they weren't concerned about it. They still, you know, like, go ahead and eat, you know? So I learned from there, I had to like, my bites were very small and I had to smash anything like so as thin as possible to get it in my mouth. Because at first I used my fingers to do measurements. At first I couldn't get it open more than like the width of my one finger. Eventually it did loosen up and now it's full range, but it took about 2 weeks for it to fully, maybe even close to 3 weeks. I don't know, at least 2 weeks for it to fully loosen up. But I couldn't open it very much at all. And it took me so long to eat that I almost like would want to give up by the end because my food would be cold and it took effort. It took a lot of effort. So I ate that, and that was kind of weird because I learned another side effect of my injury, and that was that. And then eventually my dad did leave me, and this was all in the first day. So it was closer to nighttime though by the time I got to eat. My dad did come back and bring me my stuff, my clothes and stuff. And then he left me. And I knew he had to, he made sure that like my insurance went through and like everything was, all the logistics were handled before he left. But in my mind, I was like, I thought he was gonna stay with me. But I was safe, so it's fine. But I was alone, and there was a couple nurses that were so nice to me, and then there was a couple bitches, but it's fine. And I know I looked crazy in there, but I'm gonna go through some of the memories of being in there. So it took me a long while to realize, you know what, I might have to break this up because this is so much. But it took me a long while, I think over a day, to realize I was on suicide watch. So they did have a nurse constantly sitting outside of my door and facing my room. And that was fine, whatever. But they there was one point, I'm gonna talk more about the physical injury before I get deeper, because I might take a pause on this video because it's a lot. Early on, my head injury, apparently, I guess it was filled, and this might be gross, but you know, this is what it was, but it filled with pus, and it was fluid, and it was leaking the whole time. Not so much blood, but just fluid and gunpowder and just debris from outside in the woods. And so I constantly would keep a gauze up to it. And I remember when I was pressing on it, this is so gross, but I was pressing on it, and I remember like there was like a pop. heard like the liquid like sloshing in there, like coming out. And like I just kind of helped the liquid out and like pressed it out. And the part that really got me was, as I was doing that, I noticed it felt like my skull had like caved in. And I remember asking that, I told the nurse what had happened, and I remember asking her, am I gonna have like, I pictured I was gonna be like, you ever seen the guy on the internet where like he's got like a huge dent in his head and it's like a skull is like half missing? It felt like it was gonna be like that. Severe. Like it felt like, and there is a small dent there now, but you know, I think really what that was there was so much pressure from the fluid that was built up in there that it when I was, you know, pressing against it before it gave way, it was probably puffy, and it felt like there was, so the dent was probably actually more so my scalp. It wasn't my skull at all. But it felt like it was my skull. It felt like huge dent, and it was just outrageous. And I was so nervous, and I was like, what the heck? But you know, I was going through it. I was like, this is it. This is how it's gonna be. So I don't remember if that was like the first day or not, but it was fairly early on. So my head injury was quite the focus in my mind, but there was so much, like my hair had burrs in it, and I couldn't, they did give me like a little toiletry bag that had some stuff in it, and forgetting I was on Suicide Watch, they couldn't leave the bag with me, and it had like a comb and things in it, but they were so like relaxed with me. The nurse told me where she put the bag was like right outside my door, and I actually even got it a couple times when I went to the bathroom and stuff. But it was so hard to like get up and down and stuff, and get in and out of bed. It hurt so bad, and I was thinking of so many crazy things, and I guess there was a pair. Well, no, it does. I don't know. I think there was a pair of tweezers in there. But anyways, so the nurse, at one point, she looked at my hands, and she's like, you got a lot of thorns in your hands. Do you want me to get them out? And I didn't even notice they were there. And she was so kind. She spent, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes just plucking thorns out of my hands for me, maneuvering and walking through bushes and thorns and stuff. But yeah, so she cared for me in that way. I'm trying to think. No other injury, which they determined that there was no other breaks or anything from the car accident. So they really, after they got my potassium up, there really was nothing else that they were treating on me. It was basically just keeping me there until I got a bed at the mental hospital, and they weren't going to put me in a room, and they also needed to wait for me to wanted to make sure that all my digestive functioning was working, because I believe it can be severe trauma and injury can get that stuff all kinked up and like not working properly, and then there's other issues there. So they wanted to make sure everything was working properly on me, and because I had fasted for so long before, it took a while and quite a bit of food for them to feed me to actually come out. And I remember my dad, I can't remember if he told me on the phone, or I think it was on the phone. I think he was already gone, and I remember him saying, make sure you go poop. Make sure you go poop. It's important that you go poop. And I didn't understand why at that time. And I was just like, okay. So, but obviously I trust my dad. So I was like, okay, I'll be a big kid and go poopy. But anyways, he explained to me afterwards, after I was back home, why that was important. And I'm thinking if I should tell you about when I did finally go, how crazy it was. I will. Actually, I'm probably jumping around now at this point, but when I did finally go, it was very different. And I was because there was gunpowder in my wound and probably in my bloodstream, so it did smell like gunpowder and death. But it was like, I remember I was like so scared. I was like, what is happening to my body? And because I was on suicide watch, I was so nervous. And they would not, anytime I went to the bathroom, they would have to leave it cracked right in the ER floor. And they would have to leave it cracked. And I was so like, I just felt so exposed. And like, it was so horrible. But I did what I had to do, whatever. So I'm gonna take a pause. There is a lot more to my ER adventure, but that's most of the actual like medical side of it. All the rest of it was just more so like my interactions with like the staff and whatnot. It's not so much more than I need to take a break. Yeah, we'll keep going. Oh, sorry, my chair. It's always so loud out in the garage chair. So, another fun little moment was there's some where I kind of got mad at some of the staff. One of the girls was like, one of the nurses I felt like was making fun of me. And she didn't know I could hear her, but I could. And I was, I had the little brush out of the little toiletry bag that they gave me. And I was brushing out I was like ripping out my hair because there was literal like burrs and twigs in it. And it was just so fried. And I remember sitting there while I was brushing it out, and I couldn't see what I was doing. I didn't have a mirror or anything, so I was just feeling it. And I remember she had walked past, and I heard her walk past back to her desk, and she was saying to the guy something about me just staring into nothing, looking like a zombie, which I was, because I was focusing on my hair and then also processing what had just happened to me and where I was. And I do know I was appearing to be zoned out, but I was tuned in and I heard her. And I don't know and I kind of like, next time she walked by, I didn't growl at her, but I looked at her like I knew what she said. And I think she knew that I knew, but maybe her shift was over and whatever, but I didn't see her again working that desk for the rest of the time that I was there. I think that they moved her, honestly, but I did see a glimpse of her, but they kept her away from me, it felt like. And the guy she was talking to, actually, I don't know why I'm talking about this, but I even heard him say something snidey, said something about, yeah, and I'm not going to bill her insurance for the ambulance. And I was like, why are they being nasty about me? So, I don't know. And I know I was a handful. But, that place is for, is to help people. And crazy thing is yeah, that ambulance didn't get billed to my insurance. Like, I got the bill for it, and they tried to take me to collections. Anyways, I don't know what happened to that bill. It disappeared. Not like saying I just couldn't pay it, but honestly, I haven't heard back from them. I don't know what happened to it. God handled it, so it's gone. But no, he did bill me. So I thought that's what he said when he said it, and I was just like, and it wasn't confirmed until I got the bill for it, and it should have been billed to my insurance. So I don't know. $700 bill. Anyways, so they were being nasty. I felt it, but honestly, I had bigger problems. I didn't really care about their unhappiness in their life and their job. But anyways, so, and I only had one problem with one other nurse. And honestly, I didn't want to have a problem with her. She just was assigned to a hard task. But, so yeah, I finally did get my hair brushed out, and it was so frazzled. And the worst part is, it's like the second day, they would not let me take a shower. This is so horrible. They did give me wet wipes, body size for, like sponge bathing, bathing and stuff. So I did take those in the bathroom, and I found mud in places that you should never have mud. And the nurse even said my toenails, like, they had mud all around each toenail. And she's like, yeah, that's gonna take months. That's gotta grow out. You can't clean that out. And she was right. It took months. It took months for it to grow out. But that was not a big deal. Whatever. So yeah, I was gross. And at one point, one of the nurses told me, one of my buddy nurses, she was like, oh yeah, you made, because I was like, how dirty was I? How messy was I? She's like, oh, there was a trail from wherever they rolled you in from when you came in to the room. She's like, to the MRI machine, to the bed. She's like, there was a trail of debris. Like wooded debris. So I guess they had to have like a cleaning crew come through, and like, I don't know how much could possibly come from me, but I know my shoes were muddy, which I wasn't walking on anything, but I guess just anything, I don't know, that I touched and stuff. But they did wash my clothes and stuff, even my ripped up pants. But I stayed in hospital gowns until I left there. Even I left in a hospital gown. But they did wash my shoes and things like that. And I didn't have many belongings with me. I just had the clothes my dad left me with and my little Bible. And the hospital, when I left there, they did send me with a few gauze to keep. Oh, they did, near the end, they finally did wrap my head. It took at least till the second day, maybe the last day, the third day, for them to, I asked one of the nurses, can you wash out my, it's kind of bullshit, now that I think about it, but I had to ask them to wash out my ouchie, I call it. And she did, and she got some saline and stuff, and she was really kind. But I kind of would have thought that would have been done immediately. I mean, I get it. You can't get the bullets out, but can you at least wash the mud away from it? It did end up getting infected. And now that'll go into the next video of when I was at the mental hospital. So it's about the second day. I'm jumping around, but it was about the second day there, and I made some friends. I make friends wherever I go. And there was a volunteer group that came in, and they brought dogs with them. I was so excited. And one of the men, he was an elderly gentleman. He was so sweet to me. Oh, wait. Yeah, so they came a couple times that I was there. And they, the first time he brought the dog in there, and he was like, had me meet the dog. And I feel like my dad was there, so maybe that was the first day. So I met the dog, and I was, it helped with my spirits quite a bit. And the man was so nice. And he came another day too. And so that was really fun and exciting. And it helped get my mind grounded a little bit more. And then one of the other times is now keep in mind, I still was a little foggy mind, and I still thought people were out to get me, but I also thought that there were people out to help me. And I had it in my mind that I needed to get out of the hospital because I was like, okay, they trapped me. I'm trapped. Thought I was trapped when I was in the hospital, but I wasn't freaking out or anything. But and just after I realized I was being watched, and after I had beef with one of the nurses that was set to watch me, like she told me I wasn't free to go. And I was like, so what if I want to leave now? And she was like, no, you can't. You signed it. And I was like, what did I sign? And I made her get the documents. And I was like, damn it, they got me. So I realized I was on suicide watch and that I was not free to leave. And so they were holding me until, I could be transferred to the mental hospital. But they gave me pretty much freedom to roam to the bathroom when I needed to move stuff. So one of those mornings, it was morning, I packed up my gauze, I packed up my little Bible, and I packed up that little toiletry bag that I had access to. It wasn't in my room, but they would let me grab it and take it to the bathroom and stuff. And I went to the bathroom, and I needed to plan my escape. So which I planned a little bit before I got that far, but I didn't know where the exit was. But I had an idea, and I went into the bathroom, and where their backs were facing me, and at that point they weren't standing by the door. I did leave it cracked and stuff, but I remember looking in the mirror like, okay, this is what I gotta do. Because I was so scared. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and I didn't know if I was trapped or, I didn't know if I was with the bad guys. And it was so crazy in my mind then. So I went to the bathroom, and then from there I snuck out. I did find the exit, and I managed to get outside, and it was daylight, and I didn't know what I was going to do from there. I remember in my mind, I thought that there would be maybe the good guys waiting to get me out of there. I know this is crazy, and I can't believe I'm telling it, but this happened. It's real. And I'm in my hospital non-slip crazy people slippers, no shoes, hospital gown, standing out at the entrance of the emergency room. Broad daylight, looking on where to go next. And not long, I wasn't even out there for 5 minutes, I don't think. The nurse that was really gentle with me, really sweet to me, she comes out there and she's like, Jenna, what are you doing? And I didn't tell her I was trying to leave, but I remember asking her. Because the whole time I was just like, I want to do what I'm supposed to do. I thought I was still like on a mission. I thought I was still running. I didn't know what was happening. And I remember asking her, I was like, did I mess it up? Because I remember thinking I wasn't supposed to do that. And I messed up. And I don't remember what she answered, but she was like, no, let's go eat. So she brought me back inside. We ordered breakfast. So that was that. And then, I don't know if this was the second or third day, but she, you know, that was that. And I, later on that day, the volunteer came back and he had his dogs and stuff, but I think I might have saw the dog a little bit, but that second time, but they were visiting other people and I was fine with that. And it was pretty busy. The hospital got pretty busy, the ER. And there were people that they had like out on gurneys in the hall and stuff. I've seen it at like other emergency departments if they got too many. And there was this older lady and I could hear her story, and her son kind of was in and out, but he wasn't really there. And I asked if she could have my room. But they wouldn't give it to her, so that wasn't happening. And she waved at me and I waved back at her, and they wouldn't let me talk to her. I did though. When I went to the bathroom one trip, I checked to make sure she had everything she needed. But they were like, oh, don't worry about that. But anyways, it's what I do for a living. So it's like, I couldn't help it. I had to make sure she had her services at home. So anyways, that wasn't a big deal. And then one point, I'm back in my bed, and the feet of my bed are facing the entrance to the emergency room. And I would just sit there facing, you know, out. And a weird thing happened where a guy, tall, big guy, came through the doors. And at that point, I still thought the people were after me, you know. And he had his phone up. It looked like he was like recording or FaceTiming or something. I don't know. But the person on the phone was furious and screaming. I remember hearing something like, you bitch, blah, blah, blah. And he seemed like he was kind of interacting with it, but it seemed like he wasn't though. It seemed like, I don't know what it was, but it made me nervous. And I felt like he was like recording or showing the room, and he was like straight across from me. So I took my blanket. Excuse me. Let me get a drink. I took my blanket and just like made a tent over my head with it. And that gentleman, the volunteer, who was so nice with the dog, he saw me. He's like, what are you hiding for? And I was like, I didn't say anything, but I like looked at the guy and like what was going on. And he immediately got more help, and they had to kick him out of there, because regardless if it had anything to do with me, which I'm sure it didn't, but he was not supposed to be in there. So they got him out of there. They had to get security on that. And so his dad left, and I think at that point they realized that I didn't feel safe, and that's partly why I tried to leave. Was, and I had verbally told them that, like, I just want to know that I can leave if things, like, the things I thought were coming for me, I'm like, you guys can't stop it. You're not going to be it's like fucking Sarah Connor and the Terminator. It's like, you guys aren't going to stop the Terminator. If he wants to get me, he's going to get me. So I got to know how to go. But I think that they could see, like, how I wasn't trying to stir up any drama or trying to be difficult. I just really wanted to be able to protect myself and flee if I needed to. So that kind volunteer, after all that happened, he let me walk with him around that. There was basically a circular point set up where the rooms were on the outside and the nurse's station was on the middle. So I could walk full circles around the nurse's station pretty much, where he showed me where a set of exit doors were that I didn't know were there. So he's like, here's an exit door. And then obviously I knew where the other one was because I used it. But I was like, thank you. I just need to like know how to go, how to get, like, if there's something on, like if there's an emergency, I'm not going to rely on you guys to get me out of here. So I felt so much better after that. And then he walked me back to my room. He was so kind to me. He was like, and at that point, I did keep my mouth shut about a lot of things. What I was thinking, and there was quite a bit of like spiritual thoughts and signs and just things that I was perceiving and things that really might have been part of what was going on. But I learned while my dad was there even to just, keep it to myself. And that's why I do that in these videos. I don't tell everything there. And some of the stuff, even that I was keeping to myself, I'm sure they were seeing me pacing and like staring like a zombie. Like I probably did look crazy to the outside, but it was a lot. I was processing, and it was so much leading up to it, and then those 3 days in the hospital, and then I don't know. I think that might be pretty much the gist of the stories from the hospital that I'm willing to share. What I'm willing not to share is really just thoughts and just things that I like. Like I thought that I just thought everybody was out to get me, and I didn't trust anybody. But I did feel safe. It's so weird. So I'm winding down this, but I'm trying to just like any other stuff, because the next video, I believe I'm going to go into my stay at the mental hospital. So I guess, yeah, wrapping up with this. If I missed anything that's like important, I guess none of it's important. It's just, fills in the story. I'll catch it on the next video. But so I'll wrap up with, it was like the third day there. It was late at night, like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, I don't know. And at this point, I was just ready to go to the mental hospital because I wanted a bath or shower at least. And I wanted a shower and a real bed. Well, I knew I was going to get a good bed at the hospital, the mental hospital, but I just wanted, more than anything, I wanted to take a shower. And it was later at night, and there's this big guy that came in. Big, super tall, super large guy. And he was there in the ER, I think, like the last day I was there. And they had sent off. So at this point, they were just ready. At this point, they had a bed for me. They just were in the process of getting things finalized and stuff, and they found a place. And my dad had arranged it so that I would go to a better facility than that. I could go to a good facility, the best that we could get. And he did get a place. It was up in Chicago suburb. And I didn't know any different. I didn't know anything about these places, but I have cat scratches on my chest. So this big guy, they were discharging him, and I saw him leaving, and he went through those doors that gentleman had showed me what was going on. But then he came back, and they were like, I didn't know what was going on with him. It was my business, but they came to me soon after he came back. I was like, well, we got you a ride to the hospital. So, I mean, it took them, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, maybe longer. I don't know. But they were like, we're going to get you discharged and send you off like tonight. And that kind of threw me off too, because we thought I was going to go the next morning. And I was kind of like, why are they switching up like this? You know, me and my paranoia, I'm like, we're sneaking me out in the middle of the night. So, but I was like, well, nope, let's go. And then I followed and packed up my stuff, got, discharged. On my way out, I'm like, bye, I love you all. I'm like, wait. No, but I was thanking the nurses and stuff. And sorry, my allergies have really been acting up. So I walked out, and where they put me was in it was like a refurbished cab, maybe police car actually. And it looked like a cross between a cab and a police car. And it was the back seat were like police car, like some police cars, It was like plastic seat. It was shallow. There wasn't much leg room. But I mean, I fit fine back there and stuff. And I took a cookie, my cookie and chips with me. And technically they weren't supposed to allow me to have food back there, but the cab driver, he let me. And I'll talk about that in the next video, my drive to Chicago. It was like a 3-hour drive, I think. So, and I'm thinking I'm being transferred to like, I was nervous that I was going to be like hurt. Anyway, so, but I was still like, oh, hey, let's go. Let's move it. Let's do what we got to do. Sorry. This means wraps it up time. So, turns out that big guy was too big to fit in the transport. So I got his ride instead. So they, we're going to arrange for him to get to his mental hospital some other way. So, but that was that. Yeah, I'm not even going to touch on any of the ride there and the, getting checked in and things like that. And keep in mind, it was all like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I don't even know what time, but it was middle of the night. So it was so eerie, just how everything was. And it's just, oh, sorry, I'm not getting tired. And it's starting to get dark. But yeah, it was quite the experience in the hospital. I feel like I covered everything. That was just a trip for me. Obviously, there was more than that. It was 3 days worth, but it is what it was. No, but yeah, pretty sure that's it. So I'm gonna wrap this up, and I'm thinking for sure I will do at least a 3rd video. I'm thinking that would cover the mental hospital, and then I'm thinking possibly a 4th and final video where I go into my aftercare at my dad's for 4 months, and then wound care and all that was at that time too. We'll pass that time, but so yeah. And then I think I'll wrap it up with, because the rest of it is history. It's me back to normal life, but it was all quite the experience. And I'm not glad it happened, but I am glad I survived, and fortunate to be able to tell of it, to share the experience with others. I don't know how it could help anybody, but I definitely at least want it for my own recollection. I can't say. How do you say that word? Recollection. I just need to stop. Anyways, till next time.